Okay.
Right, I've got the one and only, very well-known Manchester boxing face, Bobby Rimmer. Bobby, thank you for giving me your time, mate. But just before I have a chat with Bobby, I just want to ask anyone: can anyone hear this? So
Thanks for having me, Jamie. It's good.
No, it was a pleasure, mate. So we spoke the other day briefly about Mickey Duff.
Yeah.
Of course, I've known of you for probably 2050, like Sky Sports days, you know.
Yeah.
A long back. I always associate you with, thanks Stu, with like your Brian Hughes, God rest him, your Billy Grahams. I'm sure there's a few more, but you know, you were a very familiar face around the boxing scene, particularly the Manchester scene. So how did you get into boxing then, Billy?
Well, I was. What happened was that Billy Graham had a brother called Joe Graham, who got sadly killed. So Joe Graham used to keep pit bulls, and I had pit bulls. So I was a good friend with Joe. We used to walk the dogs together and all that. Anyway, so Kerry Cage was a mutual friend of us both, me and Billy Graham, when Billy was in the days of training at Louverlight, Ted Pete's place. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I knew I'd met Billy very briefly through Joe. You know, talking about the dogs and that. It was when Billy lived in Salford and Joe lived in Stockport, and I lived in Openshaw. So, I was at Kerry Cage's gym at Better Bodies, and we went round to his unit where he used to do his CMP stuff from. And Billy was there, so Kerry introduced me to Billy, and Billy went, "Oh yeah, I know you because of Joe and that." You know what I mean? So I used to go up to Billy's house because Billy had his pit bull, then Sugar, and I had a dog. And I used to go up and used to walk the dogs. And then I remember telling Billy that I was thinking of opening my own gym. So Billy says, "Listen, you know, I'm thinking of doing the same," because Billy was in Louverlight. So we then opened the gym, the at the back of Kerry Casey's Better Bodies. So, you know, there was an annex on Kerry Casey's bodybuilding gym, Better Bodies, and we built the boxing gym on the back of that. So Kerry sponsored all the lads with CMP. Kerry did all the lads' weights, so it just kind of fitted perfectly.
Yeah. So I mean, you were a pro early 80s. For me, that was like, I mean, obviously Mickey Duff was the man around then. You know, if your face didn't fit with Mickey Duff, then you never fought.
Well, I think that was the same with a lot of the promoters. You know what I mean? Because promoters in them days, I mean, they was the god of it all, weren't they? Because there was no TV hardly. You know, there was no, there was nothing like no TV. There was, you know, like I said, like I told you the other day, the only way that a kid from Manchester like me, who could find out what was going in the boxing world, was by actually buying the boxing news. If you didn't buy the boxing news, you didn't know what anything was going on, because there was no television coverage, there was no paper coverage. I mean, you know, it was like only the very, very top fights was in the papers. So for somebody like me who was just starting off in the program, you never found anything out. I mean, the pro world for me was in Demi's gymnasium on Oldham Road. You know, Nat Basso was a manager there. John Gaynor was a manager, and Tommy Miller was a manager there. Do you know what I mean? So you was in with them three. You was in with one of them three at your peril. You know what I mean? So you know, because there was great characters, but you know, you never came out on top with them three, did you?
Well, do you know what, Tommy Miller, for people kind of watching this, so he was the guy with the amazing kind of comb over, but he was a massive face in like the 60s, the 70s and the 80s. I spoke to John Spencer. We recently lost him. This Mickey Duff book's dedicated to him, and he said, Bobby, he said Tommy Miller would pull stunts in boxing. And he'd get away from it. You know, you proper lived and breathed boxing, didn't he?
Well, they all did. I mean, that's the way it was in them days. You know what I mean? I remember boxing at the Anglo-American Sporting Club. And Nat Basso used to run it. So it was the Anglo-American Sporting Club. It was always in the Piccadilly Hotel in Manchester. So Nat used to run it. So halfway through the show or towards the end of the show, Nat would get this fella in the ring and he'd have like dark glasses on and the blind stick. And then he'd have an empty crisp box, you know, a big box that the crisps come in. And people would throw money in the ring and then Nat would put the money in the crisp box. And that was for the Jewish Blind Society. Do you know what I mean? That was what it was in aid of. And I remember coming out of the Piccadilly Hotel one night and walking up to the car park, and the bloke who was in the ring with the blind bloke with the box was driving Nat Basso home.
Yeah, incredible.
So I mean, in them days, the funny part of boxing was brilliant. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It was like there was always something going on, wasn't there? You know what I mean? And there was, I mean, these was real characters. I mean, you know, that fella, I'd seen that bloke an hour and a half before, stood in the ring with a white stick and a pair of dark glasses on, you know, and then next thing he's driving Nat Basso home.
It wasn't Alex Steen, was it?
No, it wasn't. No. It was somebody who I'd never met him. You know what I mean? Obviously, you know what I mean.
Because as we're talking about kind of stunts that would pull, so John Spencer was at a show. Must have been about the 70s or something. So basically, the show was falling through, fights were falling off, and astonishingly, I mean, this was amazing. I don't know whether you know young Tommy Miller.
Yeah.
So Tommy actually put his son in to box, and he actually got knocked out. And Tommy was like, "Oh my God, the wife's gonna kill me."
Yeah, I mean, young Tommy Miller was never boxed, did he? Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was very slight and very small, wasn't it? You know what I mean? It was like really, really kind of. But that's how he was. That, you know, like I say. I told you that story about, you know, it was a $5 a week to train at Demi's gym.
Yeah.
And I got electric shock off the shower one day. So I've come out of the shower and I've said to Nat, I've just got electric shock out of the shower. And he went, "Are you having a shower?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "That's an extra £2 a week." You know, like, it was just, you could never win. You know what I mean? You could never win. But, you know, Kenny Daniels was the trainer there. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, so Kenny Daniels died only 2 or 3 years back, didn't he? So he was actually Paul Sykes' trainer.
Yeah, he died in COVID. He died at COVID.
Right.
Kenny used to come to the gym to see us when I was working with Billy Graham at the Phoenix camp, and Kenny Daniels used to come in. It was great, you know what I mean? And then fucking COVID, you know what I mean? COVID killed him, like, you know what I mean? So
yeah. I mean, did you know much about? So there was a boxing doctor. So he was actually an ex-fighter himself, a guy called Dr. Kenny McGill, Irish guy, around the boxing scene, particularly Blackpool. So he was very much in with your Paul Sykes. He treated Lee Duffy for gunshot wounds. He was friends with Mad Frankie Fraser, and he was the guy who gave Paul Sykes pure oxygen before he fought Gardner, which of course oxygen weakened you. Did you? I mean, he was.
No. Well, think about this. If that was in Blackpool, I've only lived in Blackpool for how long, Shaz? 10 years.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm from Manchester, so I wouldn't have known him from Blackpool. I mean, in Manchester at the time, the boxing doctor was another Irish fella called Dr. Davitt. And
right. Okay.
You know, never let him stitch it up.
Yeah,
because he used to get paid, and he used to get a bottle of whiskey as well, and he'd drink that while he was ringside. You know what I mean? So,
you know, it's like a lot of things happened. You know, I mean, obviously, I'm doing Junior Witter's book. I'll get you a copy this year. Junior's taken forever to read it. I've got a few legal issues which kind of need to be put out of the way. And he said to me, you know what? A lot of the times, people will go, "You've already weighed in. Get off the scales." And like the stunts there's a lot of skullduggery and things in professional boxing that us, the viewers, would never believe happens.
Well,
is that right?
It's changed so much. I mean, things that when I was boxing, things that used to go on. I mean, I've gone to the scales to weigh in, and they said, "Oh, your lad's been and weighed in." You know, like, so I've weighed in, and I don't know what the other kid weighs. You know, I didn't know whether he'd weighed or he hadn't. He gets in the ring and he's massive. You know what I mean? And you think, fucking hell.
But Bobby, there's a question for you there. So, do you remember the halfway house in Openshaw?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Right, because I mean, we were chatting the other day. I mean, you know, you were quite open about it. Did you have a little bit of a naughty past then when you were young?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course I did. I mean, I went from boxing. When I left boxing, I went the way that a lot of people went. You know, working on the door, and then before long, you're collecting money and you're collecting debts for people, and then you know, you're into different kinds of criminality, which I can't really go into, you know, without speaking to you first in private, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't, but we was heavily involved in crime, like, you know what I mean? I mean, the stories I've got from there are unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, the stories I could tell you that you wouldn't believe, like, you know what I mean? I tell, obviously, when I'm in America with Rampage, I was telling Rampage the stories, and he went, "Coach, you've got to write a book." He went, "You really need to write a book, because, you know, it's just, it's so far from, you know, from the boxing, you know what I mean?" And I've come back, and I've come full circle, because now I'm a residential care worker looking after kids and that, you know what I mean? So I've kind of done the full circle thing, you know what I mean? But don't forget, in the times I'm talking about, when I was the time that when I'd finished boxing in 1985, we're into the Gunchester and the Cheetah Mill and the Moss Side and the Salford. You know, you're into them times then, you know what I mean? And so, you know, my past is very, very checkered, you know what I mean?
Did you kind of get caught up in like the hacienda and all that thing then?
Yeah, well, I worked on the door at the hacienda, didn't I, for a while, yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I worked, and you know, the first raves, I'll tell you, the first rave in Manchester was the 8th of October 1988, and it was called Sweat It Out, and I know that because I worked on the door of it. And that was run by the Donnellys and that, you know what I mean? So it was all that kind of, we was in the rave scene right at the beginning.
Do you know what though, Manchester? I know it's like the rave scene, which is kind of after, but kind of before that. So the Smiths come along 1983. You've got New Order. Obviously, Oasis come well after that, but then you've the Stone Roses. I think the Charlatans were not far off, and so you've got this Happy Mondays. This kind of most like amazing James. Just so many like kind of cult bands that everyone in Britain knows. And they were kind of all around Manchester.
Yeah. Well, I worked a New Year's Eve rave at the hacienda, but it was after the hacienda closed, and they had a party downstairs. So me and my lads worked that door for the party. So all the doormen who'd worked there went inside to the party, and we was on the door. And it was, I can't remember what year it was, but Mick Hucknall turned up, and he didn't have a ticket, and he wasn't allowed in. Because it was very early in his career, you know what I mean? So nobody kind of really knew who he was, and he wasn't allowed in. He didn't have a ticket. You know what I mean?
So there's a question for you, Bobby. Did you kind of come across the Noonans then?
Yeah, I knew Desi Noonan very well, of course, you know. So, you know, I knew Desi Noonan, and I knew he's the other brother. Do you know what I mean? So, not Dominic. I've never really had anything to do with Dominic Noonan, but I knew the other two, and always lots of respect between them and me. Like, you know what I mean? It was. You know, we was all kind of in this into the same thing kind of thing. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. I mean, there's some very kind of. I mean, I've done a lot of true crime books. I'm done with them now. I think I've got one more in me, which is Michael Showers this year.
Oh yeah,
Toxic guy, and
yeah.
you know this. I mean, the Cheetham Hill, the
Tony Johnson.
yeah, you know that was 91. Obviously, your Paul Massey and all that. So Manchester, you know, whether you like it or not, it's kind of part of. You know, we were talking the other day, and you mentioned armed robbery, and like Manchester is just that's average. That's
Yeah,
normality for people to do armed robberies in Manchester, isn't it?
yeah, it was kind of steeped in that. You know what I mean? It was like that's the way it was. I mean, I remember my last professional boxing fight was 1985. So after that, that's when I moved into criminality, and then it kind of it progressed from then. Do you know what I mean? It progressed from then on. Do you know what I mean? So, but that's what it was. We was right in the midst of it. I mean, I had friends from Cheetham Hill, and I had friends in Moss Side, and you know, so I had friends in Salford. So we was all kind of right in the middle of it all. Do you know what I mean? And I was working on the door, and you know, I worked for Lock 19 and Stevie Bryant and Mickey Francis, and you know, I actually boxed Mickey Francis. I actually fought him as an amateur. Yeah. I boxed him at City Social Club. You know, because he was part of the City gang, the Cool Cats, wasn't they? And I actually fought Mickey Francis in Manchester City Social Club.
Right. So someone's asking, Bobby, do you still get to the gym then? So
yeah,
are you still? Obviously, there was the Bobby Rimmer Academy. That's kind of gone off the back burner at the minute, has it?
Yeah. So that was my gym the gym in Manchester, which used to be Billy Graham's gym, the Phoenix Camp. I ended up owning Better Bodies Gym, and I ended up owning the Phoenix Camp at the back, but I changed the name to Bobby Rimmer's Boxing Academy. But you know, to answer your mate's question there, of course, because I'm in the gym every day because I'm still coaching. I'm in Blackpool now, so Brian Rose's gym is in Stanley Sports Centre, and that's where our boxing gym is. So I'm still coaching there, and obviously I still go to America coaching Rampage Jackson.
Yeah.
So
right. I mean, obviously you're kind of well known for Brian Rose.
Yeah.
You know, I watched his full journey. Did he fight Andrade as well?
Yeah, he fought Demetrius Andrade for the world title. And we come up short that night. I stopped the fight in the 7th round, but Demetrius Andrade was a different kettle of fish, wasn't he? Do you know what I mean? He was when he fought Brian in 2014, he was right. You know, he was at his best. You know what I mean? And he was a real hard hitting, tricky southpaw. You know what I mean? He was a real. You know, he never did the same thing twice. You know what I mean? He was like real tricky. But
yeah, I mean, it was an incredible rise, really, because I'm just probably thinking it was like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. Like, can he come and he was British level, and then he went right through, and then obviously to fight for a.
Well, Brian did it. We did it the hard way, didn't we? I mean, Brian Rose boxed. I think it was his Brian Rose boxed Max Maxwell, and it was a warm-up before fighting for the British title, and he got knocked out, Brian. Now, I'll tell you the quick story. Before that fight, he boxed Jason Rushton in Bolton for the Central Area title, and Jason Rushton collapsed after the fight in front of us. We was all walking back to the changing rooms, and Brian had just beat Jason Rushton on and stopped him in the 10th round. And Jason Rushton collapsed, and the paramedics had to bring him back to life in front of us. And then they took him to the hospital, and where he obviously had a bleed on the brain. And Brian's next fight after that, he got knocked out himself by Max Maxwell, and everyone thought that's it for Brian Rose. He's finished. You know what I mean? And then after that, we won. After that, we won the British title. He defended it 3 times. He won it and defended it 3 times in 12 months and kept the British title. he boxed for the intercontinental title, the WBO, and won that. And then we boxed Maciel for an eliminator for the world title, and he won that. And then we boxed Demetrius Andrade for the world title. So we went the old way. We went the old-fashioned way. We went Central Area title, British title, defend the British title 3 times and win it outright. And then we boxed for the intercontinental title. He won that. And then we boxed an eliminator, which I think was Brian's probably one of his best fights. He boxed a kid called Javier Maciel at the in Sheffield and beat him on points. And then we boxed Demetrius Andrade over in America.
Yeah, so someone's asked, I mean, just before that question, Angel, I mean, when you're looking back now, obviously Brian Rose must be kicking on for 40 now. Done incredibly well. You were a partnership. Is it a bit bizarre looking back and you think, wow, what a journey?
Well, it's fantastic, innit, to train Brian Rose from the word go, and then go all the way to the world title. You know what I mean? It's like, it's been a fantastic journey. Do you know what I mean? It's been fantastic, and I'm very, very lucky to be involved in that. I mean, I went right in at the top level. The first time I worked a corner, it was Steve Foster Jr. at Braehead Arena in Scotland, and the next time was Ricky Hatton at the MEN.
So was that Steve Foster against John Simpson?
Yeah, John Simpson. Yeah, I can't remember. It was Braehead Arena. I'm not sure, but Steve Foster won. But they were still speak with that, and yeah, me and Ricky are great friends. I spoke to Ricky yesterday on FaceTime from. He's over in Tenerife at the minute, and he FaceTimed me yesterday. So yeah, me and Rick have never fell out. We've always been great friends, even though I left. I left the Phoenix camp and started on my own. Me and Rick, all the lads from the Phoenix camp, have always been great friends with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously I'm doing his Nemesis book, Junior Witter, Carol Hatton.
That was a fight that never happened, wasn't it? You know what I mean? And it would have been a great fight, wouldn't it, Junior Witter and Ricky Hatton? Ricky does call you the Doctor of Love. No, he calls
the Gangster of Love.
The Gangster of Love, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
The Thief of Hearts for some reason, I don't know why. But that Benjamin's put how hard does Rampage it, and didn't know Mike Bisping. I've never met Mike Bisping, but Rampage Jackson has got medically flat feet. So his feet are flat on the floor all the time. So every time he throws a punch, Rampage Jackson, it nearly goes through you. You know what I mean? He's very, very heavy-handed.
Do you know what? Touching on the Manchester scene, you know, people are familiar with Hatton, but before that, I mean, I remember being at the Nanex Arena about '96. Steve Foster.
Yeah.
I can't think. I think it was Chris Pyatt.
You're in the era there of the likes of, you know,
Carl Thompson and
don't remember Phil Martin. Phil Martin wrote the book on Manchester boxing. You know, Phil Martin was the one who brought Manchester to the front with Carl Thompson, Ensley Bingham, you know, Steve Foster Senior. You know, without Phil Martin in the Manchester boxing scene, it would never have been the same.
And then, of course, a couple of years later, with Hatton was Gomez and Farnell.
I mean, in the gym, when I was working with Billy Graham, there was Ricky Hatton, Matthew Hatton, Paul Smith, Matthew Macklin, Michael Gomez, Anthony Farnell, and Steve Foster Jr. There's Manchester all wrapped up for you. You know what I mean? It was, and for me to be a part of that, I mean, you know, I thank my lucky stars every day that I work with. That's where I learned the pro game, in that gym with them. You know, and that gym was a crazy place. I mean, everybody trained really hard and worked really hard, but the fucking around and the messing about in that gym, you'd have never believed it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I remember doing a load of rounds on the body belt one day, and there was all like, fucking hell, Bobby, that's brilliant what you've done there. Fantastic, you know what I mean? And I went in the changing rooms to get my clothes on, and they put all my clothes in the shower and turned the shower on.
Yeah. Didn't Billy have like lizards or snakes? And like Ricky used to like turn the heating off, and the snakes were like freezing all weekend.
Well, what we had was Billy has always kept snakes and stuff like that. So in the office of the gym, we had a big iguana tank built, and there was a couple of iguanas in it, and he used to let them out round the gym. You know what I mean? So honestly, it was a crazy place. I mean, you could walk in that gym sometimes, and there was an iguana in the ring.
And then, of course, John Murray was a character as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, John. But after I left Billy Graham and went on my own, Billy Graham then left the Phoenix camp, and then Joe Gallagher took over. Because Kerry owned the boxing part of the gym then, so Joe Gallagher took over. So then you had the likes of John Murray and Joe Murray and all the people that Joe Gallagher had. They was all there. Do you know what I mean? So that gym, like, is a massive part of the Manchester boxing history. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Your Scott Quiggs, your Andy Crawlers.
Yeah.
Now they've all retired. Bobby, who's the kind of names coming through Manchester now? Because doesn't seem to be that anyone really knowable.
Well, I mean, you've got to be looking at Callum, Ricky's son, haven't you? You know what I mean? You know, you've got to be looking at Rick's son, and Matthew Atten's got his gym going in Stockport there. But you know that there's not a lot of Manchester boxers about at the minute, is there?
Yeah.
You know.
No, that's exactly right. I was reading the boxing news earlier, and there was always, you know, like so much, like the Scottish one, Scott, one of Joe, British title lightweight. I forgot his name, and there was always names, and I had a look, and I was thinking, there's not really any. It's kind of almost Manchester. So Manchester is a city. It's like Liverpool, and it's like London. You know, I would probably say, apart from London, Manchester is probably in front of Liverpool and probably the number one in Britain, maybe along with Sheffield, for producing fighters. And it's just gone a bit quiet at the minute, Bobby. Why is that?
It's like a lull, isn't there? Because, I mean, Joe Gallagher's now got, you know, he's always got a gym in Saudi, hasn't he?
Right.
But Joe's gone back now to Phil Martin's gym. He's got the Champs Camp, Joe Gallagher. So he's got a lot of Manchester fighters coming through. So it won't be long before they're back there again. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So there's a question for you on the screen, Bobby.
Hey.
There's a question for you on the screen.
Yeah. How did I find the transfer from boxing to train MMA? So Angel, remember this: when I go to train Rampage Jackson, there's a team of coaches. So there's a boxing coach, which is me. There's a wrestling coach, which is Paul Herrera. Then there's a kickboxing coach and jiu-jitsu coach, which is Tiki Golson. So when I go over there, I'm part of a team. Even though I sort all the training out for everybody, because when I go to America, I live in Rampage's house. So I'm like the lead coach, you know, telling everyone when we're training and stuff like that. So I'm the one who gets him to the gym because I live with him. So I spend more time than anybody with Rampage, you know what I mean? But I still do the boxing. I don't do wrestling or kickboxing or anything. I don't know anything about that. Do you know what I mean? So.
And have you still kind of got the passion for it? I know you mentioned Rampage, but is there any kind of names from Britain that you could go on another journey like you did with Brian Rose?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of young kids that I'm training in the gym now that have not turned pro yet, and they're still boxing amateur. So I like to take kids from the beginning to the end if possible. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, Blackpool's a small town. You know, there's not a lot of fighters in Blackpool. So if you're going to take a kid to the top from Blackpool, you're going to have to get him round the ages. Like I've got these two lads, like 16 and 17, and they're slowly coming through the amateur ranks now. You know, now Brian's got the affiliation in the gym and that. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's like a slow process in it. You know what I mean?
Do you know what? I'm just trying to think of Blackpool fighters, and I mean, there was one from who fought Audley Harrison. Was it Scott Gammer or Matthew Ellis?
Yeah, Matthew Ellis. Yeah. So he was.
And
but going now, there's a kid called Will Goldie who's a good fighter. There's a kid called I'll remember his name in a minute. You've got Will Goldie who's just won the Central Area title. Brad Ray, who was training with Ricky Hatton, he's now in Blackpool. Brad Ray, he's training in Blackpool. And you've got a young kid called Jake Avril who's very good, and there's a couple of other kids. So they're just setting off in their professional career. So you'll probably hear from them in the next 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? Benjamin's asked, have I been on Rampage podcast? And yeah, because I have been, because Bear, who runs Jackson, he sponsors me as well. So I get all my clothes off Bear, all the Jackson clothes. And
right.
I've been on
so we were chatting the other day about Paul Sykes. Obviously, I'm very familiar. I've done 3 books, starting to be a film.
Yeah.
You know, it is taking its time. It's on Western Edge website. And so he was in Blackpool a lot. In fact, he married a woman from Blackpool. So he was very familiar with a guy called Mitzi Walsh. Bit of a naughty.
I mean, he's one of the legends from up here, Mitzi Walsh.
Yeah, apparently he chased the craze out and all that. And
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a story that goes round, doesn't it? I mean, you know, they say that about Jimmy Swords, who's just died. You know what I mean? They say that Jimmy Swords chased the craze out of Manchester.
The Quality Street Gang.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it seems like the craze got chased out of everywhere, don't they, from the north of England, if you're going to believe it all. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
some of it is urban legends, obviously, in it. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, do you know what? It's grapevine. You know, now with the internet, course. You know, I forget how many times I've been beaten up, and I'm a cross-dresser, and all these kind of.
I mean, yeah, people say all sorts, don't they? I mean, it's really simple. You know what I mean? So, people can say anything about you, but to get back to the boxing, I mean, from me, you know, it was strange, really, because I worked Ricky Hatton's first fight against Vince Phillips. And then the following Wednesday, I was in court for fighting in Manchester Town Centre. So I worked the Vince Phillips fight. And then I went to jail on the Wednesday after the fight. And I got 15 and a half months in jail. And Ricky got a cut against Vince Phillips. So I came out on a tag. And I got to work Ricky's next fight. So I didn't miss any of the fights. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm sure I remember. That was about 2003, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2003. I was fighting in Manchester Town Centre. There was a big brawl in Manchester Town Centre, and we was fighting at the Sawyer's Arms, and we got away, like, but I'd been hit with a chair, so like my head was pissing blood. So, and we'd been out for the day out, like, you know what I mean. So I had my suit on and all that. So I remember getting to King Street, and I was looking, and I was looking in a jeweller's window, and all my head was bleeding. So I had my hand on my head, and I could hear all the dogs bark, police dogs barking, and the sirens going and all that. And then it went really quiet, and I thought, I'm all right here now. You know what I mean? It's cool. Anyway, I just excuse me, mate, and I turned round and it was the fucking police, like, you know what I mean? So it was bung in the back of the van and off I went. And I got 15 and a half months for that.
So, do you know what? I mean, for me, like, as a northerner, watching it, 2005, 2006, 2007, Ricky Hatton, Las Vegas, 30,000 Brits. You know, that was... listen, Henry Cooper was loved, Frank Bruno was adored, and then Ricky Hatton just went, here, hold my pint. And from someone who's just written his nemesis arch rival's book, listen, there's no fight on the planet could have matched Ricky Hatton for popularity. What was it like to be around that then? The world, the sport world was watching it.
Yeah, it was great because, I mean, we was all, I was drinking then. I mean, I've not had a drink for 12, 30, 14 years, I think. So I'm been sober for 14 years. But before that, we was all out drinking and, after the fight. And I used to own a pub called the Prince of Wales. And that was like, everybody lived there, Mike Gomez stayed there, Paul Smith stayed there, Matthew Macklin stayed there. And I had a flat where they used to stay as well. And so after the fight, we used to all, after the day after, we used to all go in my pub and was in my pub all day. Ricky Hatton, Mike Gomez, Matthew Macklin, Paul Smith, everybody was in there all day and all night. You know what I mean? It was like fantastic times, honestly. I mean, yeah, as you can imagine, the stories of what happened and what went on. Unbelievable stories, some that I obviously couldn't, dream to tell you about, you know what I mean? Yeah. But
like the crap shirt days.
Oh yeah, the shit shirt days and stuff like that. I mean, think about this. Ricky Hatton won the world title on a Saturday night, and then on the following Tuesday night, he was playing darts for his local pub. Where else? Where else would you get that? And I'm from going out with Ricky and being with Ricky and all them times. I never ever saw him once say no to a photograph.
Yeah. He's do you know what he's like? I mean, I'm very familiar with Josh Warrington, and I've known Josh before he was famous, and we text and met up many times. And do you know what? Josh is probably the closest thing to Ricky. He's like, do you know what? I've met so many people the last couple of years, and like probably the two fighters, I could tell you they're even nicer than what I thought. I've got to know them. It's Josh Warren and Ricky Burns, and Josh Warren is very much from the same ilk as Ricky Hatton. Watching him lose to Mayweather, it was like your best mate.
Yeah.
I mean, I interviewed Ricky for the Dominic Negus book, and I remember him as an amateur. Richard Hatton from Sales West. Yeah. But I don't know him, and when he lost to Mayweather, it was like Britain was like a massive come down, and I've never really seen that with a fighter.
Yeah, well, everybody was behind him, weren't they? Because you talk about the people's champion.
Yeah,
of course, it was the people's champion. Thanks, Papa, mate. Thank you. Take care, he said. So, Ricky Hatton was the people's champion. It was like the kid next door, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? And the kid. Ricky Hatton. He like after the fight when he'd be drinking and all that, he'd call in the pizza shop and get a couple of pizzas. And he used to pay the pizza delivery man a little bit extra. And he used to drive Ricky home on the back of his moped. So Ricky's world champion. He'd have one of them stupid daft hats on, with no visor on it, with two pizzas in his hand going home.
So there's a question for you, Bobby, on the screen.
Yeah. Paul Doyle used to come to the when I left the Phoenix camp and I bought we got the gym Ultimate Fitness in Staley Bridge, and the boxing gym was on there, and Paul Doyle used to come there to the boxing gym there, and I met Graham Boardman a couple of times in Wigan. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So what's the plan for Bobby Rimmer then? You're early. I think you're about 64 now.
Yeah, I'm 64 now, mate. Yeah.
So, I mean, have you got another decade in the game?
Oh, easy. Yeah, they're not getting rid of me that quick. You know what I mean? I'm just waiting to find out I don't know if you've seen the announcement, but Brian Rose and Rampage Jackson are going to be fighting in Qatar on June the 8th. So
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Rampage is having a crossover fight. He's fighting Shannon Briggs.
Right.
And Brian Rose is fighting somebody else. So we're just waiting. Brian's in training now, and Rampage is in training over there. So we're just waiting to find out when the press conference is in Qatar, because we're flying out to Qatar, and then when we've done the press conference and that, we're flying over to California, me and Brian, to train, and we're going to train together with So I'm going to train Brian and Rampage to fight on the same bill, which is a massive achievement, in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know what, Bobby? It sounds like boxing's been good to you. You've travelled the world and that.
Listen. I honestly, I'm going to be quite serious with you. Boxing's kind of saved my life, because boxing took me back out of criminality and put me back into boxing. So you know, you know, I'll never slag boxing off, because boxing's been a saviour to me, and it's been fantastic. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, believe it or not, without boxing, I wouldn't have met Sharon, who I'm with now, without boxing, because Sharon, my partner Sharon, our son Danny, he suffers from cystic fibrosis. So we was in the gym one day, me and Brian said to me, "Oh, there's a lady been on the phone from Blackpool. Her son's really ill in Wythenshawe Hospital, and she wants to know if we could go in and cheer the son up with the belts." He said, "Do you want to come with me?" And I went, "Yeah." So I went to Wythenshawe Hospital with Brian's belts, and that's where I met Sharon, my partner, who I'm with now. You know,
yeah. Do you know what? That's complete fate.
Yeah, I mean, so everything that I've achieved and where I am in my personal life now with boxing, it's all because of boxing. You know, I wouldn't. I'm going to get a bit soppy now, but without boxing, I wouldn't have met the love of my life.
Sorry, no, do you know what, mate? That's cracking. Honestly, it's yeah, it is. Do you know what? I'm a firm believer in life of what's for you won't go by you, and it's written in the stars that you're meant to meet.
I mean, look at me. I'm a kid who is training boxers in a gym in Denton, and I got a phone call one day asking me could I have a look at training Rampage Jackson. Now, I'd never been involved in MMA. I didn't know anything about MMA. So, and I was really busy. I had Brian Rose, Jack Arnfield, Kieran Farrell, Johnny Case. I had a load of boxers training him, and I was really busy. Plus, I was running Better Bodies Gym as well. And so I looked on the internet at Rampage Jackson, and I saw he was in the A team. And I thought, fuck that, I'm not training an actor. Do you know what I mean? It'll be a load of bollocks, this. Anyway, and then I had a look at a bit further on, and I seen his knockout reels and all that. And I went, and then all of a sudden, I met Rampage Jackson. I'll tell you the funny story. The first time I met Rampage Jackson, they brought him to my gym, and I was in the ring on the body belt with all the lads, and I didn't have an assistant. I was doing it all myself. So the in comes Rampage Jackson with his manager at the time, and then I'm dripping, soaking wet. I'm doing about 20 rounds on the body belt with the lads and that. So I've stopped and I've got out of the ring and I've sat on the edge of the ring talking to Rampage Jackson, who I've just met, and he fucking fell asleep while I was talking to him, and I thought, I think he's taking the piss, you know what I mean? I think actually taking the piss. And it was because he'd just got off the plane and he was jet lagged, you know what I mean? So I started training Rampage then. And you know what? We've been best friends ever since. With me and Rampage, it's off the word go, do you know what I mean? And let me tell you, he ain't the easiest man to train. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's all sorts goes on in them training camps, and I've got to try and keep it together, like, you know what I mean? But
do you know what you said there? Boxing's been good to you now, but Mickey Duff used to say, listen, I love boxing, but in an ideal world, it doesn't belong. But I mean, I've been around enough fighters. You know, I've got Nick Manner's book coming out. He was kind of very much like yourself, saved from prison and all this kind of thing. And you know, boxing will always save a lot more lives, but it's a very ruthless, unforgiving game, isn't it? You know, it's
you know what, Jamie? I found that out early on. So, Dean Powell, God rest his soul, who was kind of a mentor for me. He said to me, "Pick a job." He said, "And pick one job," because I was coaching, obviously, when I met him, and I said, "Well, Dean, I'm gonna be a coach." You know what I mean? And I would never get involved in managing fighters and promoting fighters because I've not got that ruthless, horrible person in me that managers and promoters have
like what kind of Mickey Duff had?
Yeah, like listen, let me tell you something, Jamie. Now you know I keep racing pigeons, don't you? So I race pigeons as well.
Yeah,
I've got 3 lofts of racing pigeons in the back garden here, so that's my passion. So I'm really bad at on a deal. So if someone says to me, "Listen, I've got a pigeon here. If you want to buy it, it's 200 quid," I go and pay the 200 quid. So I'd be the worst manager in the world. You know what I mean? So I don't get involved. I've never got involved in the managing side or the money side. The only part I'm in is coaching. And I like to think I'm a decent coach, you know what I mean? Because I've stuck to one job. You know, I can't, you know, try to make deals for boxers with promoters and managers. I'm completely out of my league, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't even dip my toe in that pond, you know what I mean? Because I've seen it so many times, you know, how ruthless they are. And, you know, listen, you know, there is a bad side to boxing. You know, anywhere there's money, there's a bad side to it, you know what I mean? But I've always stayed away from that, do you know what I mean? Because it's not in me to rip somebody off, do you know what I mean? Or to know for a fact that you're getting someone a fight knowing full well they're going to get beat up, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it is I think you have to be a special person like Mickey Duff, and you probably knew Brendan Ingle. I spoke to Brendan towards the end of his life, and I could tell he was a very shell of himself, but he was a man who took no crap. He stood up to Paul Sykes. You know, he did not take any crap.
Brendan Ingle is another one of the greats in boxing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, these greats in boxing, these great coaches, these great managers, these great promoters. Brendan Ingle's right at the top of that list. Yeah, I remember when I was boxing and Brendan Ingle wrapped my hands one night, you know what I mean? And like, there was the best he'd ever been wrapped. You know, and I knew Brendan because I worked on the boxing board of control with Brendan, you know what I mean? And, you know, we never stopped laughing, me and Brendan. We used to laugh and chat and talk. And he used to say to me, "Bobby, remember them stories you were telling me because you need to write them down now," you know what I mean? It was really, really funny the way we used to talk about stuff, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I can advise you on regarding the book. But you know what, Junior's book, The Avoided, will be out this year. I'll give you a copy. And he said when Brendan wrapped your hands, he said it was like your bandages felt like part of your fist. He said it was just unbelievable.
Perfect, yeah. I mean, to go, it was great. I mean, he wrapped my hands, and it was the best that ever been wrapped. You know what I mean? But to go back to that book thing, Jamie, I couldn't put on paper what I know. It'd be impossible. You know what I mean? I wouldn't mind sitting down and telling you a few stories, but I couldn't put down in black and white what I know and what I do. There's no chance, mate. Unless I wanted to get myself put in jail for the rest of my life, I could probably do that.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean? So
regarding boxing, though, Bobby, who's your favourite fighter of all time?
Danny Lopez. Have you ever seen Danny Little Red Lopez?
Not much, no.
Have a look at his record. He was a Mexican, and it was before Canelo, and he had red hair. And he used to get in the ring with a big Native American's headdress on. You know, all the feathers.
Yeah.
So just have a little look. Have a little look at his record. He was an absolute murderous puncher. Honestly, Danny Little Red Lopez. But
and who's a fighter where you've been in the gym and you've just watched them being in awe and just thought, my God, you were special?
Brian Rose. I watched Brian, and Brian Rose's boxing ability was second to none. You know, he was great. I mean, but I've been spoiled, haven't I, Jamie? I mean, I've been in the ring, in the gym, working with Ricky Hatton and working with Matthew Macker and Paul Smith and Michael Gomez. You know what I mean? And Michael Gomez, without doubt, was the toughest fighter I've ever trained. You know, he was so tough, and you know, and his story's tremendous. You know what I mean? From the way he was brought up and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think there's a book been wrote about Michael, but I mean, to be part of the Manchester boxing scene was it's like you couldn't put a price on it. You know, you couldn't. For me to be part of what I've been part of, you couldn't put a price on that, Jamie. You know, it's like. But I mean, when you ask me about my favourite fighters, I mean, you know, all the greats, the Mayweathers, the Muhammad Ali's, and all that, they're all great. But Danny Little Red Lopez, if you ever watch some of his fights, mate, he was a murderous puncher. And it's strange, isn't it, that I really like big punches, but Brian Rose was never a big puncher, was he? You know what I mean?
No.
You know what his mates call him, don't you?
No.
Brian Points Rose. You know his registration on his car, you know what it is?
Go on.
Lion UD. Lion unanimous decision.
Right. So Brian's kind of done all right out of boxing then, kind of got out at the right time. And
yeah, I mean, Brian Rose does a lot with kids, you know, like.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, he does so much with care in the community and all that. And, you know, like 3 classes a week looking after mentally challenged kids and stuff like that. You know what I mean? He does so much, you know what I mean? He does a lot. I mean, you know, we all work in the gym, and the gym's a council gym, and it's great. You know what I mean? It's a pleasure you know, these kids nowadays, Jamie, they've been asked, because of the internet and stuff like that, they've been asked to grow up too quick. And you know, kids today, Jamie, they've been asked to grow up too quick. They've been let down by the government. You know what I mean? We was very, very lucky when, you know, there was youth clubs on every corner when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, you had lads where I boxed as an amateur, and there was Ancoats lads and Moss Side, and you know, we was very lucky. Kids have got fuck all now, mate. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's the era of the smartphone, and you know, I was talking to James English not long back, and he said, "Do you know what? I'm waiting for a time when everyone has kind of post-traumatic stress from social media," and I can totally understand that comment. There was something I was going to ask you. Oh God, it's slipped my mind. I mean, what was Ricky Hatton like on the body back then?
Well, there's another thing. Ricky always did the body bag with Billy Graham.
Right.
I did it with everybody else. You know what I mean? Ricky was a savage, wasn't he? I mean, you only had to watch him fight. He was a savage, wanted the body punches and all that. And you know, he was like he was a savage, wasn't he? You know, and you look at Ricky Hatton and people think about his drinking and all that, but you know, Ricky Hatton never, when he went into camp, he never drank until after the fight. He was the ultimate professional like that. He never mixed training with drinking and all that. I mean, he hated walking in the gym the first day back, but when he walked in that gym that first day back, that was him off the beer, done.
I mean, how heavy did he get? Was it about 14 stone?
I seen him walk in the gym one day, and his first day back, and he was 14-4.
So that's actually a heavyweight.
Well, think about this, right? So he weighed in at, so Ricky weighed in at 10 stone. But when he got in the ring to fight, he was always round about 10-9, 10-10.
Yeah.
So from 10 stone 10 to 14 stone 4, he didn't do bad, did he?
Mm.
But like I just told you, on the way home, 2 pizzas. You know what I mean? And drinking and eating and you know what, Jamie? All boxers have got an eating disorder, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
Because they diet and train for 10, 12 weeks, and then as soon as the fight's over, they go out eating, and not even if they're drinking, but the way they're eating and stuff like that, and it's like an eating disorder, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, is Michael Gomez has kind of vanished off the scene? Is he okay now, or?
I think he's not. I don't know, because I've not spoken to him in a very, very long time. But I think he's not too good. I don't. Yeah, I don't mean physically. I think mentally.
Yeah. I think he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, wasn't he?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So I've not seen him for a very, very long time. Do you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Do you know what? When I think of Bobby Rimmer, you're part of your Brian Hughes, Bob Shannon was part of it. I know he's off the scene now.
Yeah.
Billy Graham, Joe Gallagher's kind of come afterwards, but that kind of very Mancunian, if you like, all right, our Kid Oasis and all that, and you're part of all that in my head.
Yeah. I mean, we was all part of that, weren't we? You know what I mean? And somebody caught the people you just mentioned just then. They caught. So somebody was talking to me one day, and he called us the Concrete Angels.
Yeah.
It's it was a great. It's been a fantastic time to be a boxing coach.
Was there anything you wanted to mention, Bobby?
No, Jamie. I've kind of done it all, mate. It's and you know what, Jamie? I've really, really enjoyed being on your show.
No, do you know what, mate? It's been an absolute pleasure. So I'm gonna I'll make sure you get a Mickey Duff book. That'll probably be out back end of this year. Junior's had his book since October. We've got a few legal issues with kind of certain someone. But do you know what, mate? I'll make sure you get Junior's book. And do you know what? We'll keep in touch, Bobby. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir.
Great,
Thank you so much for your time.
Listen, anytime you want me to come on here, mate, I'll always make time. And thanks to all your listeners and your watchers for watching us. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
If there's anyone who wanted to contact Bobby, can I put all your links in the bio of this video?
Yeah, put it all in the bio, mate. Bobby the Coach, at Bobby the Coach, or not anything at all, mate. Just listen,
Bobby's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, so anyone wants to reach out to Bobby, click in the bio, give him a message. Very approachable, knows his stuff.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
Bobby, it's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay then, mate. Thanks, Jamie.
God bless, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.